Theo Katzman, musician, songwriter. I mean, this guy is so fucking talented. Like, I don't even know what his main instrument is because he's so good on everything. I'm very, very much looking forward to talking to Theo. I know Theo and we've hung out a few times, but I don't know him that well. So if you're a fan of Theo Katzman, I hope that together we get to know him better on this podcast. You know, I haven't prepared any questions. So from Wolfpack, he's a solo artist. This week's guest, episode 9, the last ever episode 9, the last of the single digits. This week's guest is the incredibly talented Theo Katzman.
Love is in the water, love is in the air. Show me where the love and tell me where love be there. K-Rock. Love be there. New York's new alternative. That was... Every radio station in New York was dope, man. All the rock, dude. That's what I grew up on.
I'm very flattered that you actually enjoy the pod, man, honestly.
Oh, dude, I love it, man. I mean, I really love it. I think you are being very, you're being authentic. And like we talked about, and it's hard. It's weird. I just always want to compliment people because I love people, and if I'm talking to them, chances are I love them and I love what they do. But I know that sometimes it throws people off because it's like, I love it, and they're like, oh, now am I gonna be good enough or whatever? It's like better to be like, set a low bar, but fuck that.
It's very hard to be Irish and take a compliment,
I have noticed you guys are much better at taking the piss.
This is important to note 2 things. One, we are friends, but we're friends to a certain level. And I want to get this out of the way off the bat in case there's a Theo fan or a Wolfpack fan listening and somebody who knows like all this shit about you. And they're like, ask him about track 7 on his Heartbreak Hits album. And I'm like, I don't, you know what I mean? This is not going to be that style of interview. And you're cool with that.
Oh, I'm so cool with it. I don't actually know what track 7 is off the top of my head. I'd have to look that up.
You have a weird love affair with Ireland.
I do.
And that's how we know each other.
I know.
Where does that come from? Because Katzman, I don't feel like it's an Irish.
Yeah. Sounds a little, I don't know what the word is. Jewish, maybe? Are there Jews in Ireland?
Of course, it's a multicultural country.
Am I allowed to say that? I think that's a good way to start this.
The weird thing about being Irish, and I'd love to observe the Irish from your perspective as an American and then somebody who's visited Ireland a lot, because we can't take a compliment. You have been so complimentary about this podcast. And I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, it's just a thing. I don't know what it means.
I think that's a healthy part of your culture to a large extent. Let me just get it out of the way that I really don't know. I don't know shit about Ireland in terms of like, I could make a lot of statements that from my lens as an American, I'm like, oh, this is the way this feels to me. And I'm sure that an Irish person would be like, that's not how it is, bro. So I just want to get that out of the way too.
It's important to note though, the way you feel is the way you see things. Firstly, it's not an academic podcast.
No, and I'm not an academic person. Okay? But I think the culture, the Irish culture, like the Irish people were like a heavily oppressed people, and you're all tough. I don't know, it just feels part of the culture to be like tough, and I think part of toughness and getting through war and things like that, has to do with just like kind of like sloughing things off and being like, it's not a big deal.
I don't even like this term. I'm not kind of rise up to the Irish thing, but the term artist, to say the phrase, oh, as an artist, I feel like, that makes me feel very uncomfortable.
Right.
Like to refer to myself. And I don't mean that in he's so genuine. It's not in that way. There's something about referring to yourself in a category.
Totally.
That kind of eats me up a little bit on the inside.
Well, from my lens, you guys are like, I'm sorry, you guys, you Irish. The Irish culture, from my lens, it feels like it's closer to a traditional, there are elements of tradition in it, which there aren't in America in the same way. I was at an amazing festival in Michigan earlier or last fall called Harvest Gathering in northern Michigan that my friends run, and it's an amazing festival and a music festival, cultural thing. And there was a Native American woman, indigenous woman there, talking to mostly American, mostly white audience here in northern Michigan, and she was talking about the European descendant people being in America being basically like wanderers, kind of like lost because they don't know where they're from. And I had this moment of feeling like, oh my God, that is true for me, you know? And I looked at my friend Tyler Duncan from the band The Olam, and he's an amazing musician and actually won the All Ireland piping championship at some stage. But Tyler and I looked at each other and it was like, wow, this is part of what we love about Ireland, I think, is the feeling like the Irish people know, like, are from somewhere, if that makes sense. It's not like their culture was just imported from America. I know that it's getting more Americanized everywhere in the world, or more globalized, westernized, whatever you want to call it. But like there are elements of tradition there, that traditional music, language that are harder to find in America if you're, you know, just sort of like a third generation American, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I don't want to be derogatory about America. I chose to live in this country. So
yes,
as somebody who's not American, a lot of people forget that 250-ish years is not a very big period of time historically. So you talk about third generation, fourth generation Americans. It's a very new place. It is made up of the rest of the world. New York, you're a New Yorker. That's where you're born and raised, aren't you? Long Island?
Yeah, I was born in Manhattan and lived there till I was 7, and my parents moved us to Long Island. So I really grew up on the island, baby.
But isn't New York built on a Dutch settlement, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you probably know more about that than I do, but I have heard that. I'm sorry. I'm an idiot.
I'm pretty sure that New York's original name was New Amsterdam before it was called
Yes, that I have heard.
New York City. And as far as I know,
crazy,
hookers and weed aside, Amsterdam is in Holland. So I believe that New York was initially populated by the Dutch, and then there was some shit with the English. We all have problems with the English.
Right.
But America is rich with its own culture, and you're seeing that when you go abroad now. But it's a newer type of culture, which is what it once was in Ireland, like 800 years ago, I'm sure, where we were very much Irish, English, Scottish, you know, French, whatever. But everybody it was a lot more separate compared to now.
Which I want to be clear, like, I think, you know, the melting pot effect of you know, is wonderful, and I hope it's the future. I mean, we all need to accept each other and mingle and coexist, and I love that about a city like New York. I mean, it's amazing, you know? LA has a ton, you know, you can be in like different countries in Los Angeles. It feels like that, you know, because all the signage is in a different language and everybody's speaking a different language and there's all kinds of food, and it's an amazing thing. And America, like, certainly does that. So, and I'm very lucky to be born with a U.S. passport, and as a musician or as an artist, as we said earlier, it's very, you know, I didn't really realize the leg up you have just having an American passport in terms of the entertainment business in 2020. I mean, you're living in a different country. You had to get a visa? Like, wow, man.
Yeah, man.
Congratulations. I think I told you when we were first hanging out, I was like, bro, congrats.
And the worst part about the visa that I have, its title by the US government, which I had to write on so many forms, is alien with extraordinary ability. Do you know how much that killed me?
It must have been so hard for an Irish man.
I had to make a thesis of my life. Like, I've been lucky in terms of the entertainment business that I'm intrigued to hear of your beginnings, because I actually do not know.
Wonderful.
I started when I was 18, like professionally, quote unquote. I was getting paid to do radio. I started a band. I was getting paid to do shows.
Yes, amazing.
Somebody was even paying me to DJ at events, and still to this day, I'm not really sure how to DJ, but it's the biggest racket in the world.
You said that, not me.
I had to take all that, put it into a big book and give it to your government and then meet a guy and he would say, what qualifies you to be extraordinary? And I had to stand in front of this man and say, I am the best guy ever.
Right. I'm the best DJ. I'm the best musician. I have all these creative ideas. I'm so different.
I came here for that. But like you said, the entertainment industry, it's quite interesting here because Ireland, rich as it is culturally, and, you know, it has a great history of the arts from language and writing, music.
Phenomenal, really. I mean, for especially the size of the country and the amount of influence, it's crazy.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. Well, it once was quite a large population, but like now, like U2 are the biggest rock band in the world
ever. Like, I think they're definitely the highest grossing touring act of all time.
It is crazy, but if you stay on the island, if you stay on the rock, baby, you haven't got the same access like here. You've got access to 330 million folks.
Totally.
So like, if you wanted to do Theo Katzman solo and just tour Ireland, you're not going to make much money or sell out 10 theaters. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
What you just did at the start of this year, you couldn't do that because there's not enough people nor space. So
sure, punters, as you call them, not enough punters.
Yeah, you're born here, so you got this great access to this great wide country. So now I want to know, we don't know each other, like we know each other very socially, which is cool. You born in Manhattan, raised in Long Island. I don't even know, Theo. I don't even know what your first or fundamental instrument is. You're so good. You're so good at all of them. The voice, the guitar, the fucking piano, the drums. You do everything. So where did it begin?
So I started, the first instrument that I fell in love with was the drums. That's when I felt like I really, my real desire for music turned on very strongly at age 12. I was in the ensemble, I think maybe is that 6th grade, 7th grade? I don't know. I was age 12 and in the school band, and I was playing clarinet, and the band I noticed was slowing down. And it was frustrating me that we were slowing down. And I remember telling my dad after school one day, my dad, by the way, was a professional musician, master musician, a trumpet player, a jazz trumpet player.
So you grew up with music in your house?
I grew up with music in my house. My mom is the daughter of 2 professional musicians, and my dad is a professional musician.
Oh, wow. So it's really in the fact that you're noticing like a classical arrangement slowing down at age 12, you're pretty tuned in to what's going on.
I was bummed, man. I was like, and I told my dad, I was like, we're slowing down. I can't figure out why. And he just said, the drummer's not holding it together. Like, the drummer can't play, And I was like, what drummer? There's like a snare drummer, there's a bass drummer, there's a cymbals person. It was classical high school band, So or middle school or whatever, grade school, I don't even know. But yeah, so around that same time, I heard Led Zeppelin at a friend's house, and I just completely lost my mind over John Bonham, the drummer for Zeppelin. And yeah, so then I just told my dad, like, I have to play the drums. And my dad was thrilled because, he was a musician, and he got me a little drum kit, and I took to it. And shortly thereafter, once I got into, like, rock and roll, I started listening to Zeppelin and Hendrix, and pretty soon I was, like, singing and playing drums in my first little kid band. And then I started playing guitar. So my dad got me an cheap acoustic, and I started playing guitar, teaching myself, and writing songs and singing. And then eventually I got some lessons, and then I went to college at University of Michigan for drums because I was able to. I had always done drums in school, and outside of school I was always in bands on guitar. So that's really where my foundation is. My entry point in music is drums instrumentally, but I was always singing. Never really took voice lessons until I was, out of college, actually.
Wow.
And that was a big moment. And now I study now, or not currently with the coronavirus, because I'm not going over to my teacher's house here in LA. But yeah, I still take voice lessons, and it's a great thing. So yeah, that's how I got into music.
clarinet is number one then, essentially. That was your first.
Okay, if we're gonna go there, then I'll go to piano when I was age 7. But I really didn't take to it. They were making you go like ding, 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 ding. You know, I've taught music, and part of the reason I think kids have a hard time with music is because beginners' music isn't fun for them a lot of the time, because a lot of time kids have a good ear, but they just don't have any, they haven't accomplished anything on the instrument yet. It's day one and you're like, play this. And they're like, no, I want to play a Green Day song. And if you're lucky enough for them to say, I want to play a Green Day song, then teach them a damn Green Day song, because you can get away with 2 notes on the guitar and teach them, basket case or whatever. And it's like, let's do it.
All of that exposure as a kid, like now as adults, we know that your brain is like a sponge between 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Don't they say you can have perfect pitch, but you need to learn it as a kid, because that's your only shot in your life at learning perfect pitch. Do you have perfect pitch?
Interesting. I do not have perfect pitch. Perfect pitch is like a frequency recognizing mechanism.
Yeah, it's essentially when the subway doors are closing in New York, it's F sharp B. Beep, boop.
Yeah, my friend Louis Cato is the best musician I've ever played with and seen, and he's one of the greatest living musicians today. And I really mean that. And he actually played drums for me when we did a couple shows with Paul Brady.
Oh yeah,
in Ireland last year, which was a thrill. Anyway, Louis is as good as me times, I think maybe 1,000 would be the correct on every instrument. And he plays trombone. I can't even. It's like a joke. Except that he has perfect pitch as well, and it's crazy to see him, what that does for somebody with that level of musical ability too. Because perfect pitch isn't inherently a musical thing. It's just like it's a brain thing.
Yeah, it's like synesthesia, when you can. Like you see colors or whatever, is that?
Yeah, but imagine if you're synesthetic, is that the word? If you're synesthetic, but you're also a musician or you're a painter, then it's like, that's really cool. You know what I mean?
It's the golden ticket. I believe you can only develop perfect pitch up to the age of, I think it's like 4.
Wow.
At the oldest. In the same way that you're born, and if you're born and your mom speaks Spanish, you're going to just get it. Whereas now, you got to download Duolingo.
Damn it, Duolingo.
Congratulations. You have reached lesson 5. I studied French for 6 years, and I could not hold a conversation with any person in French. Like,
it's harder. Definitely harder.
So you must have had that, like, it must have been a natural thing for you if your dad's a professional musician, your grandparents are professional musicians, you grew up, there was piano. You might not have liked piano, but you're still hearing tones all the time. And the great thing about piano, it's like the Bible of instruments.
Oh my God,
there's
totally.
Rhythm, there's melody, there's chords. Whether or not you liked it at the time.
Well, now that I'm getting into it now, it's like, wow, the piano is the foundation of Western music. It's where harmony comes from. It's like playing guitar for years and learning harmony on guitar is so weird. Like once you sit down at a piano, which I did about 2 years ago, I bought a piano and was like, all right, if I don't play this thing, then I'm going to know that I have a piece of furniture in my house that I don't touch. So I started sitting down at the piano and it was like, oh my gosh, everything makes sense now. Everything starts to make sense. The guitar starts to make sense. You start to realize how ridiculous the guitar is.
I know.
Once you just look at a piano.
I know, it's funny. Even the guys that are really, really good at guitar, like you've been a professional musician for what, like 15 years? Longer?
I guess so, yeah.
How many guitar players, even, that aren't excelling in guitar, how many can sight read or understand?
Oh, almost none, yeah.
Even, I got to mention our friend Dara Munnis, who introduced us and is on episode 3 maybe. He's
great episode for those who haven't heard it yet.
Dara Munnis, classically trained pianist, and he was saying that when he was learning as a kid, hated it, stuck at it, and as he got older, he couldn't play any songs without the score.
That's so interesting.
Where on guitar, it's almost, the guitar's the opposite way. You develop an ear, I guess, you might not necessarily know. I was watching, you know Blink-182.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Tom DeLonge and Blink-182 put up some Instagram thing where he's in the studio, and that guy's got to be 45 years old now.
Yeah, amazing.
He didn't know what a flat 7 was.
Amazing.
Of course you don't know.
Well, he didn't know what it was in his brain, but I could, he's played it, you know, or he's heard it and been like, well, put that thing in there, you know. Guy's a genius.
That's the thing, man. Like it's kind of strange in that way. Are you classically trained or no?
I'm not. I don't. Let me think about how to answer that. I mean, I'm not like a great sight reader. I can sight read. I was pretty competent on rhythmic sight reading for a long time. I haven't needed to like read professionally pretty much other than a chord chart in like honestly 15 years or something. Like it's crazy how little for what I do it requires that. But so I don't know. I mean, I can't play classical music the way that a classical musician can. I wouldn't even be invited into the living room. You know what I mean? I can't hang at all. So I wouldn't really say I'm classically trained in that way. Like I can't do any classical repertoire without sounding like a dude who just spent 30 minutes learning it for the first time. You know what I mean?
But you seem to, like, I've seen you live with Wolfpack. I've seen you live as Theo. And I genuinely didn't know. Usually they're the guy who plays the guitar can knock out a few chords on piano. He might be able to keep a 4/4 groove on drums. You know, he can play some bass, but he's not going to sit in the pocket like a bass player.
Right.
I couldn't work out is Theo a singer? Surely that was his first thing. No. Oh, he's playing the road now. Surely keys. He must be trained on keys. Oh no. He's soloing and singing along with his solo on guitar. Surely guitar is his first. I couldn't work out which was like if I was jamming with you, you go, oh, he's a guitar player. Do you have a preference or is it what you're feeling?
It's important to remember that it's all music, you know? So because I started, nobody told me you had to pick one instrument. I just played a couple, and fortunately I have a good enough ear that I can hear my way around things and I can hear what I'm going for, which as you get older, you know, that makes learning a new instrument a little easier in one sense, but also harder because you realize how bad you sound. Whereas I don't remember sounding bad on drums, you know, like I'm sure I did. I'm sure I sounded terrible as a very, very beginner, but I don't remember it.
I think you're more comfortable sucking when you're a kid. You don't want to be 27 and sitting on a kit for the first time and not be good. Right. Like you said earlier,
it's just harder.
You kind of want to skip the shitty songs and get right to the nitty gritty, you know?
Totally. But there's no skipping the shitty songs, man. Whoa, yeah. But no, I mean, I definitely think that the singing and music itself is the connecting factor. I mean, I'm a multi-instrumentalist, you know, there are many of us. I think it's more rare for the drummer to also, the drums double is a little more rare. I see a lot of people who play guitar and piano very well. Which always blows my mind because they're just two completely different ways of thinking about harmony. They're the two ways of thinking about harmony. But I think the drums is an amazing foundation for all instruments because it not only teaches you rhythm, but it also teaches you, if you're really listening, it'll teach you note duration as well, which is like huge for all instruments and feel. So that's really cool. But yeah, I mean, thanks for the compliment. Thanks.
I think your experience of music is really important. I don't know if you know Adam Neely. He's a Berkeley graduate. He puts up videos. And he talked about the difference between a contemporary musician experiencing music to a classically trained musician experiencing music. And I don't have this insight because I'm not classically trained, but apparently they're two very different things. So I guess I always notice drummers, any drummer I've worked with that is good, they can pick up a song and they know the sections of a song. And I guess to get into it more, like you said, note duration, they can pick up sections of a song far faster than other instruments. So upon one listen, you're figuring out, oh, this verse is 16 bars, it's 8 bars, then it goes to this. There's one bridge, that's where that is. There's the chorus, you know.
Yeah, they've had to learn 1,000 tunes. That's part of why. You don't really play drums solo, you know. The drums are a team player. And so, I mean, you can play them solo, but I haven't seen a lot of professional gigs where it's just a drummer in the back of the restaurant playing away for 3 hours.
No.
I would be down to eat at that restaurant.
Nor have I.
Yeah, so, they have to learn 1,000 tunes. Bass players are even crazier with form a lot of the time.
Which is quite interesting because nobody ever thinks about the way one experiences music and then the experience of music from people who aren't musicians is different also. And you try to capture that when you're writing, I guess, much like the way people love, I'm not a drug guy. And if you want to do drugs, that's cool, man. You do your thing. But I imagine those who do MDMA frequently or like to go to EDM. I don't know if you're like me and you don't enjoy EDM because you can hear copy, paste, 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 paste.
I'm not huge on EDM, but no disrespect to the genre from me. I just don't. I like people playing instruments, man. Like I just don't. It's hard for me to get into the live show. I know that there are lights, but that's not really why I went to the concert. I went to the concert to see a human like play an instrument. I mean, I call me old fashioned, but like that's where the thrill is for me. And that's where I'm at.
I would share that opinion with you, but the reason I bring up MDMA, not just for the sake of it, is
sounds like you really like this stuff. Just kidding. No, I'm not a drug guy either.
Two cool guys on the pod.
Two cool guys.
They don't realize that EDM is on average between 120 and 135 beats per minute.
Really?
Which coincides with your heart rate. A healthy heart is around, 60 beats per minute, 60 to 75 beats per minute. So all EDM is in 4/4. If you're taking MDMA, it releases dopamine, serotonin, your heart rate increases. The DJ throughout his set is upping the tempo, by 5 beats per minute at a time. So you're there going, oh my, this is the best time of my life.
Yeah, right. It's like an ecstatic experience.
But the music is coming into that because you're getting punched in the chest.
Totally.
Every
oh my God.
2 times a heartbeat.
Yeah, I can't hang, man. I can't hang at all. Wolfpack did a gig one time in Chicago where we were about to play the show, big festival set. And I thought they had like house music on. It was outdoors. And I like turned to our guy who's far away in the back, back doing sound. And I mentioned like, cut the house music, and he's going like, no, I can't or whatever. And I'm like, cut the house music. And it's still happening. And the guys are looking at us like, you got to start now. Like it's 8 PM, whatever. Right. So I turned to the mic, I grabbed the mic and I'm like, kill the house music. I said it to the entire audience. And then my monitor guy chimes through the speaker and he's like, that's the stage down the street playing like EDM. And I was like, no. Nuclear whiteout like of sound. I was looking at Jack just bashing the drums. I couldn't hear him at all. It was crazy. It just bass eats everything,
Yeah, it's another world, but my point is the experience of music. Like I brought Katie to your show in Brooklyn Steel.
Oh, cool.
And her first comment before you guys were on stage, sold out Brooklyn Steel, baby, in New York. Theo Katzman just saying. So we get in there and she goes, why is this full of dudes?
Oh no.
And I go, you know what's worse? Everybody here is a guitar player. You know what I mean? Like you've captivated like the hardest sell in music is to sell music to other musicians, man. Come on.
Well, I will, before Wolfpack became popular, I will tell you that I was about 50-50 women, men, which I was very proud of. In fact, I skewed a little more female than male. Wolf is a very dude audience. And so now there's more dudes at my shows. But, I'm grateful for anybody who's listening for sure. And I do think it's maybe there's something in my music that's kind of like, I don't feel like it's so muso that it's like theoretical or something and it's conceptual. It's just songs, but musicians tend to like it for some reason. So I'm happy about that.
Is it 2 solo albums?
I have 3 actually, but the first one came out in 2011. So it's not one that a lot of people know.
What's the name of that one?
It's called Romance Without Finance.
You're very good at titles. Side note. Are always interesting.
Well, thanks. I didn't take that one is not original. It's actually an old jazz standard, and my dad used to say that all the time. He'd be like, "Romance without finance is a nuisance." See, I never got to go to Ireland with my dad, but my dad was like such an amazing he was a trumpet player, but he had tons of lyrical gems all the time. He would just say shit that was like, wow. And actually, so he passed away in 2013.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
But I found, yeah, thanks. He was 85 years old when he died. Actually, he was an older dad. So he had an amazing life. But when I found like some writings of his, and it's like the same compulsive kind of journal-y rhyming weirdness that I have going on. So that was pretty exciting.
You didn't know he did this?
I had no idea. No idea.
That's weird.
I know. It's very cool.
Is your mom still around?
Yes, my mom is alive and well.
Does she live in Long Island?
My mom lives in New Mexico, actually. My parents retired and moved out there, which was kind of cool. It's a beautiful place.
So you're in these high school bands, and then you studied in college doing drums in Michigan.
Yes.
At what stage of your life did you start to do bigger shows? Because a lot of people have the experience of college gigs where there's a guaranteed audience. When did you kind of get out of Long Island, get out of Michigan where you kind of studied, and start doing shows? Like, was Wolfpack your first outing, or was there a time before that with your own Theo stuff?
Yeah, well, that's an amazing question, because I'm like, wow, that's so cool that you don't know anything about it. It's beautiful. It's like, oh yeah, I can just tell you.
You know what's really embarrassing? The very first time that we met each other was in a bar in Dublin. It's called Doyle's. It's famous, Doyle's. I know it's a big Irish second name.
I love Doyle's.
It's famous for the Ruby Sessions that happens upstairs. And our friend Dara Munnis, who is our connection, my other friend Dave from Canada, who got to know Dara from Tash Sultana, which shows how goddamn small the world is. That these two people I knew from separate walks of life met each other. Dave is in Dublin. Let's go and have a pint of Guinness. Okay. And then they said, oh, my other friends are here, Wolfpack. And I ate shit because I didn't know who Wolfpack were at the time.
It's amazing.
You guys all arrived to the bar. Everybody in the band were talking. I hit it off with Joe because I was in a long distance relationship at the time. Joe was in a long distance relationship, and and I didn't realize that, like, that's fucking Joe Dart. The bass players love Joe. I was like, this is just a guy.
Which he is.
And honestly,
and one of the greatest.
Exactly. I liked meeting you guys that way because I got to know.
Oh, it's the best.
I got to know you guys as opposed to, oh, that's Theo. He's in Wolfpack. Hi, Theo. Here's my demo. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. It's kind of the only way to real friendship, really, is just honest, meeting of someone and deciding if you want to talk to them.
Especially in show business, because it's like, who are you? What do you do?
I know, man. It's hard to get over that. And but I think the Michigan time really helped me. So to answer your question, no, Wolfpack was not the first thing I did. It was much later that happened. So I went to Michigan. I was studying in school, joined a band with my friends, with Tyler Duncan, called My Dear Disco. And I was playing guitar in that band. It was kind of like electro dance pop with, electric guitars, but kind of like a little more dancey focused, but not EDM. Okay. Not even.
Well, that was kind of, was this like 2007, 8? Around that time?
It was probably 2006, dude.
This is kind of when this electro thing with like MGMT, and this was kind of happening in contemporary music.
Exactly. Exactly. That was happening, and we were joining in, and it was we toured around the country. So we would play in the Michigan scene, and then we'd try to, we'd play Detroit, and then we'd play Chicago, and then we'd play Ohio, and then we'd try to play Pittsburgh, and then we were kind of doing the expanding concentric circles thing. And long story short, I got burnt out. Everybody got burnt out, basically, because it's really hard to slug it out on the road like that when you're trying to make a name for yourself.
And you were the drummer in My Dear Disco.
No, I was actually one of two guitar players. Yeah.
Oh, so you go to drum college and you start a band and you play guitar.
I know my professors were like a little freaked out because I kind of freaked out when I got to college and I realized that actually I wanted to play guitar and I wanted to sing and write songs. So anyway, I joined this band with my friends. We tour around the country and eventually I decided like I wasn't happy doing it. I really wanted to do my own music and I thought about it. I was like, well, I'm actually a singer-songwriter. Like that's what I did in high school. That's I had a high school band of my good friends, and we would play songs and write songs, and I was the singer, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. So I quit the band, and I started my own gigging and my own project, and that was around 2009. My first record came out in 2011, and then I moved to New York. All the while, in terms of, when did I first start doing bigger gigs? It was a very gradual process, but I moved to New York. I was playing at Rockwood Music Hall. I would come back to Michigan and play my Michigan gigs and play festivals in Michigan and play the Blind Pig in Ann Arbor and play around the state where I had made relationships and I had contacts at venues. And then my buddy Joey Dosick, who was also in My Dear Disco, he moved out to LA and I started going and visiting Joey, a couple times a year. Every couple months I'd go out and buy a plane ticket and for a couple days and hang out with Joey. And Joey's from LA, so he had all these deeper LA connections in the music scene. And so pretty quickly I was kind of connecting to like level 3 LA in terms of people that were really lifers in the scene out there. And because of Joey, I was able to like really get in on with some really amazing musicians and people who had been there forever and didn't have anything to prove, and they were just kind of like, oh, cool, you're a cool dude and you're talented and we could use you on drums for this. We could use you on bass for this. Hey, what are you doing tomorrow night? You want to sing at this? And so I started noticing that every time I went to LA, I'd have like a full week of music opportunities. I'd go there with no gigs, and then I'd end the week having played like 6 gigs in 4 days,
Is this all from networking and knowing people and your circle growing?
Basically, it all happened through Joey. Yeah. And this is still pre-Wolfpack. So at some point, I was still in Ann Arbor, and I was hanging out with Jack Stratton, who started Wolfpack, and Jack put a session together one day with for a friend of ours who had a college final project to record a band on analog tape, and Jack called us all in, and we all played the music that he brought, and that he filmed it, and it ended up being the first Wolfpack album. And then I went on back to do my solo thing, and we would get together like once a year and make a record basically in like a day. And over the years that just grew a YouTube following until all of a sudden it kind of like hit some traction. I think maybe 2014 or 2015 with the Spotify prank that Jack did and the song Back Pocket. And yeah, we started getting really good festival offers. And then it was like, well, we're not even a band. And then it was like, well, no, you are a band. I like to tell the story of going into the Hudson Tunnel one time, or whatever, Lincoln Tunnel, one of the tunnels into New York with my old band, My Dear Disco, in our short bus. We had a short bus that we ran on waste vegetable oil. Terrible idea. If you have a hippie heart out there, I love you. God bless you. Do not even think about running a Ford E350 on waste vegetable oil. This is a serious actual nightmare, and you will be covered in trash oil behind restaurants. You will run into your ex-girlfriend covered in trash in Washington, D.C., and it will be a very awkward experience.
Oh, it's funny. It's funny because this is a thing that actually happened to you. This story is too specific. This metaphor.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So we pull into the tunnel, and there's a woman taking the toll money, and she says, $35 or whatever. And I look at the sign and I'm like, oh, it's $13.50. And she's like, this is a bus. And I go, no, it's a car. It's technically a car. And she goes, look at it. It's a bus. And I don't know, I'll never forget that moment, because that's kind of what happened with Wolfpack when people were like,
look at you. You're a band.
You're my favorite band. And we were like, well, we're not a band. And people were like, yes, you are. And it was like, oh shit. I guess we are. You know, like you don't get to control what people think of you. And that can be difficult sometimes when when you feel like, well, this is me or this is what I want to do. But you kind of have to learn that it's not up to you. I mean, you can do what you want to do with your time, but the way people perceive you is really out of your control. If you're going to spend time trying to architect how they're going to perceive you, I think it's a very exhausting and most likely impossible endeavor.
I feel like that statement is also particularly poignant now, where there's so much time put into that on social media, even from those who are just, not necessarily in show business, but this whole personal brand nonsense.
It's so crazy, man.
Contrived existence where you couldn't be more correct by saying you can't control what people think. And you can also take away from that is don't worry about it.
I know, it's just so hard not to worry about it.
It is. What will be, will be.
You're right. Don't worry about it. I mean, I do not enjoy social media. I really don't. I use it. I'm addicted to it like we all are, but I feel much happier when I'm not putting my brain down that. It's just the weirdest. It's a new thing that we are like, they figured out how to get us. They're working the psychological trapdoors of just how important humans feel that others' opinions of them are.
Oh yeah.
That's the currency that's being sold. So I don't mean to sound like some kind of conspiracy theorist. It's not a conspiracy. It's totally out in the open that this is what this stuff is. And I know it can be used for positive, and we're all in the entertainment business, and it's a great way to get your name out there. And I use it for that. But when I don't have to, I will. As soon as I don't have to, I'm out.
Oh, the minute you don't have to do it, you're out. This is a relatively new podcast. You're the 9th guest. I have had one guest who she made her career on social media, so I guess she likes it. But
yeah, amen.
Everybody else has expressed disdain toward it for the maintenance purpose. Oh, I had a comic on. I got to think of content. I got to put jokes out, Now artists, and you haven't done this, which I like, artists are steering away from albums, which traditionally were a body of work. Maybe there's a thread throughout the album and you can really capture a time from an album. It's now, well, let's have an EP because that's 4 songs and we get it out there. And then in 2 months, we'll do another 4 songs and it's EP land. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The singles thing, it's the medium of distribution dictating the way people are making the art, because you can hit the algorithm each time you release a single. You have one chance at hitting the Spotify algorithm, and if you can drop one of those every week or every day then you're better on the algorithm or whatever. But there's that's a reality of it. If I put out an album of 12 songs one day, then it's sort of like, oh, that was that day. If I did a song a month, it'd be like I had 12 releases as opposed to 1. But I haven't gone into that yet because I have the good fortune of having built this for years and been building a fan base that like is used to me making records and are actually, have shown that they are interested in purchasing a record, like when I make an album. So I don't want to just lose that opportunity to sell them a record by just only putting out singles. You know what I mean?
That's longevity right there, as opposed to clout. Longevity is greater than clout, obviously. If you want to be sort of flavor of the month, sure, get your shit out there. I feel like the real art is making your way through life, and at every turn you're adding to the catalog.
Yes, that's what I want to do anyway. And believe me, I'm not above it. I've definitely spent many, many, many times in my life drowning in my own confusion over how to, fit the new world of marketing. And I'm not the best guy. I'm really not a good guy to ask for advice on how to market yourself. I'm the wrong guy. Because it's not what I care about. I mean, I care about it as much as, again, I want to do it effectively, but I'm not the guy with strategies. I think your best strategy is to get good at what you do through working at it, and then having your own self-esteem mechanism give you the confidence to, be a positive, open-minded person out here in the world because you feel good about the work you make and the process that you engage yourself in regularly. That's what I'm trying to do. It's kind of working.
It's also not your job. You don't work in marketing.
I agree with you historically, but now it sort of is your job because, you see the blog post that writes up about the songwriter and it has 2 likes. But if that songwriter posts it, it's got 2,000, It's like, oh shit, you are actually the marketer, and we see more and more people that are getting good at that kind of thing, and power to them, There's an art to it for sure, and if that's where your personality takes you, then God bless. I mean, my friend Jack Stratton of Wolfpack, he's one of the best in the world at this.
What this Spotify prank you mentioned earlier was, in case somebody does not know, it was a silent album uploaded by Wolfpack to Spotify because Jack presumably noted how I presume the algorithm works. You get a certain amount of money for a play.
Yeah, and the minimum amount of you could have a 31-second track constitutes a play.
Yeah, it's like same on YouTube. A 30-second. Somebody watches your video for 30 seconds, you get a view. But then on Spotify, your Wolfpack uploaded a silent album, 10 tracks of silence, and you encourage your fans to stream this at nighttime while they're asleep on repeat. And I think you guys made about 20 grand off that.
We made 20 grand, and we spent all that money on a very hilarious short tour of like 4 shows, like San Francisco, New York, Chicago, and Michigan or Ann Arbor or something. And turns out it's actually really, really hard to play free shows. That was the whole thing. It's like, well, we'll play a free show in your town. It's very hard to get a venue to let you play a free show because then you just have to rent the room and the pricing structure is all different and it's totally confusing. And we ended up really learning the hard way on that one.
There's a lot of things that people don't think about with, particularly in the US, about like costs and union costs.
Oh my God, dude. Now we're talking. Now we're getting into it, baby.
Your Madison Square Garden show.
Yes.
By the way, Wolfpack sold out Madison Square Garden in New York City. People can only dream of this, and congratulations. You guys shot that. The whole show is live on YouTube. You can watch the show. It was shot quite interestingly because the camera op is on stage, so you get the perspective of the artist.
Yeah.
Which could be an artistic decision, or to the best of my knowledge, and I'm only fresh in New York. If you want to shoot a show in a large venue like Madison Square Garden or in Central Park, I believe it's about 10 grand.
I think it's
per
camera.
Yeah,
I was going to say. Yeah, that makes sense.
So if you want to shoot Madison Square Garden, you're going to have at a skeleton crew, you're going to have 8 cameras. So that's 80 grand that you have to give to the union or whoever takes the money. I don't know what it's for. And say, oh, we just want to film our own show that we sold out, but you guys can have money, which is insane. People don't know this.
Yeah, Madison Square Garden is the most expensive venue, I think, in the world. Or it's definitely up there. People do not make money playing there. They play there because it's MSG, and it's for the love, I mean, but you'll see a lot of huge artists on big tours play at like PNC Bank Arts Center in Jersey. Or they'll play on Long Island because, you're going to drive to that show if it's a big enough artist.
Is it taxes? Is it because it's in Manhattan?
Because it's just, the money, the amount it costs to turn the lights on in that room is phenomenal. It's staggering.
The formation of Wolfpack, accidental.
Yes.
You said Jack Stratton brought you guys together. Joey.
Yes. Yeah, these guys are all we're super close friends. I mean, we were all hanging out a ton.
I always refer to Wolfpack almost like Wolfpack is an idea.
Yeah, I agree.
Wolfpack is a collective. It's kind of like...
I agree, man.
It's almost greater than a band.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, because you guys are all from different places. You got like a rotation of different members. Some guys will come on for some songs. There's backing singers. Sometimes there's brass. Sometimes there's not brass.
Yeah, it's a freaking phenomenon, man. It's totally, I don't understand it. And I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Wolf. People will be like, but people don't realize Jack is such a mastermind that, like when Wolf releases a new track, I am often hearing about the fact that Wolfpack just put out a new release via, my friend's mother texting me or something, or somebody being like, dude, I love the new thing. And I'm like, what new thing? And they're like, oh my God, are you kidding me? I'm like, no, I haven't checked my email yet. It's like Jack, we're all fans of Jack and we're all fans of each other. And it wouldn't have been possible before the internet, but with the internet and with having a friend like Jack, who's really like one of the guys who understands the internet and is a true artist of it. We call him the Billy Strayhorn of the internet. For those who know who Billy Strayhorn is.
That's a Muso joke for people.
Yeah,
here.
but he's an artist, of the whole thing. And yeah, it is. It's a concept, and it's kind of a phenomenon. I feel like people have Wolf tattoos, man. It's like, whoa, and power to them.
It is so big around the world, which is great because of the videos you do. And initially, was it that recording session for the guy who was doing the college project? Were all the original members on that session?
Me, Woody, Joe, Dart, and Jack. That's it.
Do you guys know Jack independently, or you know each other independently? Was it out of Michigan? Were you all studying in the same college?
Yeah, we were all studying in the same college, and I knew Woody. I have a great story of meeting Joe Dart. I right after I quit the band My Dear Disco, Jack had called me and he was like, hey, he had a band called Groove Spoon. It was like a 7-piece funk band, and Antoine Stanley was the singer among a couple other people. And Jack called me one day and he's like, hey, our bass player moved to New York. Would you want to play in the band? And I was like, well, I can't play in the band. I just quit my other band. I got to do my own thing. He's like, okay, cool. It's probably, I said I could maybe do like 1 gig a month. He's like, yeah, we never gig, like maybe once a month max. Just come to a rehearsal, whatever. I'm like, okay. So I go to rehearsal, play some Steely Dan tunes. Jack's like, yeah, that was cool. I said, all right. He's like, yeah, I got another guy coming in tomorrow, but unless he's like a total freak, you got the gig. I was like, all right, cool, man. So I called Jack the next day and I said, was he a total freak? Jack picked the phone. Hello. I go, was he a total freak? And Jack, in my mind, he was in tears. Like, it sounded like he was crying. And he's like, he was a total freak. And that was Joe. That was Joe Dart. So, and what gets even crazier is once I started hanging out with Joe, I realized he was playing. We're like, oh, you're from Northern Michigan? Yeah. I'm like, oh, cool. He's like, yeah, I saw you guys with My Dear Disco play at Blissfest. I'm like, oh, damn, that was years ago. He's like, yeah. And I realized Joe's 5 years younger than I am. So I'm like, oh, you must have been in high school. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, what were you doing there? He's like, oh, I was playing with my band. I said, what was your band? He's like, tells me the name. I'm like, I don't remember it. When was the set? He's like, oh, it was Friday night late. And then I remembered years ago being with My Dear Disco, talking to my buddy Christian, the bass player, watching the high school band play and talking shit on them and whatever, all these guys, whatever. And then gradually over the course of the set, starting to be like, damn, this bass player is really good. And then by the end of the set, we're like, man, the bass player is incredible. And that was 14-year-old Joe Dart at the time. I wouldn't meet him for another 5 years or more.
Again, testament to how fucking small the world is, man.
Okay, you want to go even crazier?
Yes.
This is crazy. This one is crazy. So I was on tour with Joe with my project. So I've been playing with Joe with my music, even before Wolf. Like Joe's my dude, and Joe and I are on tour 2 years ago for my project, driving through America, and we get to talking about our families a little bit. Joe's mom's dad, his grandfather, was a man named Israel Baker. You know about this guy?
Big musician. Yeah. I met his mom at your show.
Izzy Baker, one of the most recorded studio violinists ever. Like, the movie Psycho, the shower scene? Yay, yay, yay. That's Izzy. Among many other things, okay? Now, I knew that my dad knew Izzy Baker. I asked my dad before he passed, I said, did you know Israel Baker? He's like, oh, yeah. Great violinist. He's like, I'm not sure I ever worked with him, but I knew of him. I'm like, oh, cool. They were in LA around the same time. Okay, Izzy would have been older than my dad by a couple years. But I had never thought, about my mom's parents, if any of them had ever known Israel Baker, because they're classical dudes from the East Coast, and Izzy Baker's a West Coast guy. So I figured, well, my dad, if anybody would have run into Izzy Baker, it would have been my dad, because he was on the West Coast. My dad lived in LA for 30 years. Anyway, I hope I'm telling this effectively, but the moral of the story is I'm in the van with Joe, and I start talking a little bit about my grandfather, who was this legendary flute player. And I said, yeah, I played on this recording of Peter and the Wolf, narrated by Basil Rathbone. I remember listening to this as a kid. I'm like singing the melody, whatever. I'm singing the melody, and Joe's like, man, I know that melody. I'm like, really? Where from? He's like, I think my mom used to play that for me when I was a kid, actually. And then I'm like, I wonder why she played that for you. Was your grandfather on that? And then we do one Google search, Albert Tipton, my grandfather, Israel Baker, Joe's grandfather, and we immediately find a book written about the Leopold Stokowski All-American Youth Orchestra, which was assembled in like the 40s and included my grandfather and Joe's grandfather in a touring band in the 40s. Joe's grandfather and my grandfather toured together, and we're literally on tour together like 100 years later.
Man, that is insane, man.
And we freaked out. We were freaking out in the van. We woke everybody up. People woke up. Oh, what's going on? I was like, you guys will never believe this. Everybody's asleep. I'm like, Joe and I are like related, man. And everybody's like, oh, cool. And they just passed out again.
Means nothing to anybody. Wait, your grandfathers knew each other. Wow, cool. Jesus Christ, man. Jesus. I'm not a big believer in like destiny or whatever, but like there are some strange things that occur in the universe.
Very strange.
That bring people together. Little did that man know that his grandson will be touring with this other man's grandson.
Isn't that crazy?
Or people you meet, like what is going to happen in 100 years if you ever have kids or whatever, man. Oh.
I know. I often think about that. Like if you could be at any point standing next to somebody that you're going to like marry and just not know them yet.
It could be a thing also where there's DNA involved, that you're both offspring of musicians, which molds your personality and who you are, thus who you surround yourself with,
Right. It's definitely puts you in a smaller circle immediately. If you just think of like, oh, I'm a musician, I'm going to move to New York. It's like, okay, well, here are the 4 places you are going to go to every month. I guarantee it. You know what I mean? It's just like, so then it's like, oh, there's 25 people in this world. Once you music is a particularly small world. So, and that's one of the things I love about it. I love people, and I love getting to meet people, and I love like doing it. I used to I love restaurants too. I love food, and I used to be obsessed with the restaurant business when I was in college and out of college. I had some little restaurant gigs here and there, and I remember I became really good friends with some chefs who are still some of my best friends to this day. And I remember one of my friends saying, like, if you don't love to clean, or if you can't handle cleaning, like you will never cook professionally, because it's half the gig. It's like you have to clean constantly when you're a professional chef. Everything is being on your way up. That's a part of the thing. You know what I mean? Like it's a part of your workflow. And I thought of that as like loading gear, loading through the kitchen, loading gear, and just knowing everyone on the production team. I love that kind of thing. I love that. When you go to, that's just one of my favorite things about what I do is like getting to meet these inside people, these like amazing weirdos. And I'm one of them. Also obviously a weirdo, but
you are. And it's also, you're very enthusiastically interested in other people. You're not a jaded guy, which is a real positive. Because there are very, very jaded guys that are not even just musicians.
Sure.
I think anybody that is even in broadcasting or acting or whatever it is, and I'm only talking about show business because, we're foolish folks.
It's all you know.
I don't know anything else. But the reason being is you meet, particularly when you're coming up, you meet older people. And sometimes you're like, oh, fuck. Like a friend of mine is a tour manager and he has a get out plan. He wants to be off the road. I think he's like 30, 31. He wants to be off the road by the time he's 35 because of the people he tours with. And he's crew, so he does in-ears. Excellent engineer. But he wants to be off the road by the time he's 35 because of people he meets on the road. And there's a lot of drugs.
Right.
There's a lot of drinking, and he just doesn't want to. He's looking at these guys in their 50s.
Sure.
And he's like, I don't want to do that. Now, it's up to you how you live your life. So,
well, that's the biggest difference.
You don't have to do that. But meeting you do your show in Brooklyn Steel, and I want to talk about your album in just a second. But go to the show, sold out show. We last saw each other just before COVID-19 stopped the world.
Totally.
We were in a bar. We were in Williamsburg in Brooklyn. And we had only met each other in Dublin, but like probably forgotten about because there was a whole tour in between now and then.
Yep. And
you were so enthusiastically interested in why I was in New York, what I was doing. And like, I would throw a joke at the table and you were laughing rather than doing, this is my after party.
Oh, right.
And you guys stayed out, and it was a very inclusive experience, which you don't get all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Well, I kind of only know what I know in a way. I mean, because I'm me, but I have seen. I think the beautiful thing about the way that my career has started to turn out, and the beautiful thing about Wolfpack and my own thing is that it was indie. It's indie, and there hasn't been a lot of bullshit. You know, there's really been no bullshit in terms of extra opinions telling us things or you got to do this or that. And also we're all really passionate about the craft. So, you know, you can't be hammered if you're going to, you know what I mean? You have to be of sound mind. You can't be fatigued. Touring is so fatiguing as it is. So doing that on drugs or drunk is so hard. I mean, it's really hard to, as soon as if I have one night of drinking, that's my voice for like a week. I mean, I can't do it, you know? So I'm not saying it's not tempting, but you kind of have to, for me, I have to just treat it like differently, you know, like I'm an athlete a little more so.
Well, it is work. You're working.
Oh yeah. And by the way, when you're doing your own solo show, it says your name on the damn marquee. So it's like, if you screw up, you do not feel good about it. You know what I mean? It's like, holy shit, that's me. Like, I bore the entire burden of the failure that I perceived I had, let's say, if I were to fail on a performance because I, you know, wasn't responsible or something.
In a theater, even like, you know, you've got the lives of the entire audience, all of the venue staff, local crew, bar staff, security.
Exactly. It's not about you.
If you kick the bucket or you can't do a show that night, you're like, there's at least 60 to 100 people that are working in that venue around you. No show, no work.
Totally. And if you're going to stay sane, I think embracing that reality that you just described and really understanding that that's how interconnected everything is, that's what makes us feel good and normal and part of something. We're a pack animal. Humans are like, we need each other and we want to feel a part of a community. And, you know, so what am I going to do if I meet somebody at a bar, at a table? Hey, what's up, man? What's your story? You know, I've had enough of myself at that point. I like to, if I could press a button as soon as the gig's over and just like enter a different reality of where like nobody, like I'm not even at the venue and I've been like transported somewhere else completely and I could just, that's my dream, you know, because I try to just like wipe it off as soon as I can after like a little couple minutes of come down, you know, but it's like, that was great meeting you that night because it was just like I don't want to live where I just was, you know what I mean, in my head for at all. I want to just like snap my fingers and be normal again, and that's what rejuvenates me.
I think you guys had, I don't know if there was a day off or Boston the next day or was a show nearby.
No, Boston the next day.
I believe that I got into bed at 4 a.m. after that, and I didn't even like. It was such a good crew of people because part of Wolfpack are like, I think Joe still lives in Brooklyn.
Yes.
And then your front of house guy who I hit it off with, Nick.
Nick is the best.
Because he's an audio guy and he works on broadcasting. Oh my God.
Yeah, Nick's incredible. He's in New York too, and that's Nick's not involved with the Wolf crew. That was just for my solo thing. But I hope to, Nick is. I hope to be able to have Nick forever. I love working with him.
Case in point, though, you get that vibe from talking to him. Like, they were all like, they're such nice people.
He's the best. Oh, and by the way, Joe and Nick are childhood best friends.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
They grew up together in northern Michigan, so it was like the dream. Nick, I had actually been working on hiring my Irish front of house engineer, Chris Ledontek. I don't know if you know him. He's amazing. He's amazing in Dublin. I love working with Chris. Nick and Chris is the dream team together. But I was gonna have Chris come over for my tour, and I couldn't because I found a plane ticket for under $500, but I couldn't get the visa to work out.
Yeah, there you go.
So I was sort of stranded, and then Nick is one of my favorite people and my favorite engineers, but he had a full-time job in broadcasting, and he basically emailed me like the day after I told Chris that I couldn't do it. He's like, "Hey man, I don't know if you're going on tour anytime soon, but I just quit my job." And I was like, "Oh my God."
He had wanted, I think, to spend some time on the road.
Yes.
And kind of, it's quite hard to break into the touring world because once you're in, but when you're on the outside, it's difficult. So you kind of gave him that opportunity.
Oh yeah, because there's so much experience you need to have that, somebody could be great at the technical aspect of the job, but then there's just like, can you handle this while people are spilling beer on you and, there you can't hear anything, and the guy that employed you, me, needs to do an interview and goes like, looks at you with his eyes all googly and goes, "Oh yeah, I don't know, man, like fix it." You know what I mean? That's the kind of shit that goes down on tour. Like the microphone goes out and it's just like, fix it now. You know what I mean? I can't be in that. Like, it's crazy.
Again, he comes with the experience of live broadcasting,
Yeah.
Because that's what he did beforehand. So he was mixing for TV and stuff, wasn't he?
Which is an amazing training for that. And Nick's also just like an incredible attitude. He's just he's a road warrior, man. I mean, between me, Joe, and Nick, like we'll drive forever. I mean, Joe and I drive like we're truckers, kind of. It's weird. It's totally weird.
Joe and I, in the middle of no touring, we were hanging out in South Brooklyn. This was before Madison Square Garden, and that sold out before I could get a ticket. So I'm sorry.
It's crazy.
But we were hanging out in a coffee shop, and it's a sunny day. I think Madison Square Garden was early October. So we're hanging out, sunny day, and Joe didn't know where he was going to live after Madison Square Garden and was so chill about it.
He's a road dog, man.
I could not believe he was just off the road, about to go on the road with you again.
Yeah.
So he was just renting an Airbnb, and he was like, I don't know. I was like, "What are you going to do next month, man? Your Airbnb is up in a week." He's like, "Yeah, I don't know. I'll figure it out." And I'm like, the juxtaposition of this world-class musician who's just sold out Madison Square Garden and he doesn't know where he's going to live in a week, and he's so calm about the whole thing.
That's Dart, baby. That's Dart. I love it. Joe and I've driven across this country so more times than I can count with Joe, and we used to just do it because we just wanted to be on the road. We would do it even when we didn't have gigs. Be like, "Yo, you want to go to LA?" It's like, "Yeah." It's like, let's drive there. It's like, what the hell's wrong with you? Joe one time took a train to Los Angeles from Michigan to pick up his car.
How long does that take?
Fucking 3 days. I don't know. 21 hours straight or something.
Is this like the 86 Volvo he has?
I had the Volvo in LA. Joe got off the train. I picked him up. It's 10:30 in the morning. Went to Union Station, got an egg sandwich. I was like, "What do you want to do?" And he's like, "Let's hit the road."
Man. I mean, what a way to live, man.
And we got in the car and drove back to Michigan. So anyway,
the newest Theo album, Modern Johnny Sings Songs in the Age of Vibe.
Yeah, what's going on there?
Listening to that record, knowing you best now, you, me, and the listener, man, we're all getting to know each other.
Yeah.
I know that you're very much into songwriting, and I know you're very much into lyrics.
Yeah.
And evidently now with your father and that. This record feels like you wanting to move on, and I don't mean move on from music, move on. It sounds like the theme in the record is you moving into the next phase of your life because you're singing more about finding true love. You're singing more about, obviously there's a song, I Don't Want to Be a Billionaire, on that record, but like,
Right.
there's an overarching theme. This is just to me as somebody who's listened, and I'm not going on reviews. I don't know what the people are saying. I don't know what the fans are saying.
No, this is a beautiful take, man, especially considering that we are just getting to know each other. I feel like it's very pure.
But that's what I feel from, like, I've listened to this record quite a bit now.
Thanks.
Because I went to see the show, but this time I wanted to know the songs.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's an observational element to the record with, you could be president in this, but it feels like you're getting ready to move into the next phase of your life, and your wants and needs, you've kind of come to realize they're a bit more simple than you would have thought when you were 22 and you wanted to be the next John Bonham.
Yeah.
Is my interpretation in any way correct here, or is that
totally correct? It's really beautiful. I don't even think I had thought that. It's totally fitting my mind right now, and what I even just this week, thinking about that. I'm definitely a theme like of what's it really about, what do I need, what do I want, and that's definitely where I'm moving, man. I'm trying to allow for that momentum.
Do you find it was subconscious when you were writing this record? I presume you wrote it like last year, or
Yeah, I wrote it over the course of mostly a year, maybe a little more than a year. A lot of it I wrote in the summer of 2018 in Berlin. I went to Berlin for a month as like a writing retreat and lived alone for the first time with like no roommates.
Oh yeah.
Just had an amazing, like, happiest time of my life, really, other than like times falling in love, But I would put it on the same par because I was basically falling in love with myself in a real way, like because I was alone and I was getting to know myself better, I mean, I think anything can be a trap, freedom, the search for freedom can be a trap in a way, because if you're always running, then you're always running. The search for, having somebody around you all the time can be a trap, because for the same reason. But I do enjoy time get spent alone, getting to know myself, because I'm such a social person, and I really do feel like I've grown a lot in the last 10 years, and I kind of, you really need to be alone to learn some of that stuff. So anyway, I wrote the songs between time in LA and time in Berlin, and I do think those themes were coming up, and I certainly started looking at the world a little differently during that time, and it's got some of my first sort of like topical, quote, political music on there, which I wasn't trying to do, but it just came out of me. And I tried to write all that stuff in a way that was observational and tongue in cheek, while still being deep and as much joyful as painful. I mean, that's really what I try to do with words. Is I want to find the point where it's like it's funny and it's painful at the same time. Not that it has to be comedy, because not everything I write is comedy, but I have noticed in my shows that people will laugh and they'll also cry, and sometimes in the same song, which I love. I don't know why I love that, but I just love. I just feel that's what life feels like to me. You know what I mean? It really feels both.
I would say you are hitting the nail on the head in terms of the whole point of music forever is to get an emotional response from the listener, which obviously traces all the way back to classical music.
Yes.
Like, you listen to Tchaikovsky, that the Fantasy Overture, this is the section about them falling in love, and there's no lyrics from Romeo and Juliet or whatever. You're just listening because by
sure,
the flutes have taken the lead, it's in major, so you're feeling something from the song.
Absolutely.
And the famous da 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 da,
yeah
da 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 da, you go, terror, run, da 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 da. So you're getting that from your listener if you're taking them on a journey and they're laughing and crying, because laughter and, heartbreak are all natural emotions. Compared to Heartbreak Hits, this is not about a breakup, or this is not about losing somebody. It's a very introspective and considered.
Yeah. I let me think of how to answer that. Heartbreak Hits was certainly about loss, basically. And it emerged as a concept because I went through a time when my dad died and I had a relationship end, like a 4-year relationship that I was convinced was going to be, marriage and living together and the whole thing, and had to move, and also lost a big professional opportunity. So I was kind of coming apart at the seams mentally, and it was a very intense time. I moved back to Michigan. I left New York. I felt like, well, I failed. I totally failed. I didn't make it there in terms of if you can make it there, New York, you can make it anywhere. I didn't make it in New York. And I felt like, all right, I failed. And it was cool because at that moment of like accepting what I had perceived was a failure at that time, I kind of like the world kind of opened again, because it was like, well, shit, I'm just going to go to Michigan and live on Tyler Duncan's floor for 8 months, rent free. Thank you, bro. I will pay you someday. I love you. That kind of thing. I regrouped my mind and I went out to LA and then started writing this record, and it was like all that stuff was there. And it wasn't all about romance. Some of it was about losing my dad. Some of it was just like losing the feeling of the guy you thought you were versus the person you're becoming. And so, but heartbreak was kind of the theme there. And then I found that title and I was like, damn, this is the record, because these are songs, and I sort of like joking about these are hits. Obviously, they're not hits. They're not on the damn radio. But I'm a big fan of the songwriter Nick Lowe, and he does shit like that. One of his albums has a cover that says, it's the album Nick the Knife, and it on the cover it says Nick Lowe, and then it says popular vocalist, like on the album cover, as if it were like, you supposed to, what the hell are you doing? Like he's just so funny like that.
You're trying to get some mom to buy it for their kid in Target when they see, oh, they must like this.
Oh, he's
guy.
a popular vocalist. Like I'm into that kind of thing. And so, yeah, this new record was different, man, for sure. It definitely felt like I grew as a songwriter. I tackled some bigger topics that I felt like didn't really have to do with my own specific experience, more like a collective observation of the world. And that was exciting. And then there were also some things that were about romance and that were about heartbreak, and it had a different flavor on this record because I've had different experiences, and some of those experiences had to do with like letting other people down and then having that be very painful. And, that was a part of this record too.
But there's an element of you, now that you've kind of spoken there about the other records, there's an element of you have learned something from these experiences. And it's almost, as a listener, it almost feels like you said, when you left New York and you felt like you didn't make it and yada, yada, yada. It almost felt like this new record is the realization that those thoughts were false, or you've learned something grander about being alive or existing, which is transparent to me in this record.
That's great.
And it took those experiences to, I don't know, it's almost like, I feel like a 22-year-old couldn't have released this album.
Oh, totally. I completely agree. It's way deeper into my own thing. It's the deepest into my own thing I've ever gotten, I think, in a way, which is weird and kind of bizarre. Like when you get into your own thing, you look at it and you go like, wow, what the hell's this? I guess that's me. I'm sure that these songs, I know that they have my own unique stamp on them in a way that it's almost like, I don't even know if it works, but I just know it's real. I know it's honest. Some of the shit I've done lyrically on this album, I'm just like, wow, this is so absurd, but this is joyful. This is fun. This is like that song Best, about getting a letter like from an ex that's signed with the salutation best instead of like love. That's like that's an absurd song, It's like, and I mean absurd in the way, I mean like it's ridiculous, but it's deep too, and it's fun, and it's like, what would I get if I really let myself go wherever my brain and my creativity takes me? And that's what I got, was this record. So, I want to be the kind of artist that Artist. There we go again. I want to be the kind of artist and person, really, because there's not much of a difference once you start doing this. You know, it's just you. It's you as a person, and your art is you, and all that. It is for me anyway. And I want to be the kind of artist and person who basically does my work, and then if I get to a place where I feel like, okay, I resonate with this. This is real. This is honest. Then I put it out. You know, that's the kind of artist I want to be. Like Paul Brady has so many albums, you know? I love that. I love the prolific. I'm not as much that way as I want to be, but I hope I can get there. And this album is certainly, you know, I left it with the feeling of like, all right, there's nothing else I can do. This is my best. And that's a good feeling, you know? It's a cool kind of acceptance when you get to that point where you're like,
would you say that's the first time you've felt like that after the amount of time and effort and energy that goes into a record? Of course, you were happy with the other records before, but it's like this sense of actualization.
Yeah, right. I mean, honestly, I've felt that every time I've done an album, and I think that's the cool thing about the process is like, you know, you think you're getting better, or you hope you're getting better. I know in some ways I am getting better, but as long as you feel like you left it all on the field, it's a great feeling to be like, shit, that's all I got, you know? And because at that moment, you can't be anything other than what you actually are. You can't be the conceptual version of yourself you have in your head where you're a genius or you're terrible or whatever the hell you think you are. You're just the thing that you actually are, you know? And you kind of listen to it and you go like, damn, doesn't sound like doesn't sound like U2, doesn't sound like Feist, doesn't sound like John Mayer, doesn't sound like Stevie Wonder. Shit, it's not Paul McCartney. God damn it. You know, I wrote a little funny song that I almost put on the record, and I'll sing it for you right now. It went, I'm still not Dylan, still not Paul. I ain't getting closer to Joni at all. Stevie and Donnie sing circles around me. And then I went to a dominant 7 for Tom DeLonge, okay? And then I said, I can't write hits like John Mayer can, or even old Ed Sheeran, which I thought was funny. And I don't know exactly where I stand, do-do-do-do. But somewhere in the middle, there I am.
And the reason this wasn't opening the album was why? God damn it.
I didn't have the balls.
That into You Could Be President. I'm signing off on that. Go.
I know. Ah! Honestly, I was one day I had to finish it by this day in order to make the deadline, and I was like, I hadn't recorded it yet. I recorded. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, all you need to do is a radio tuning in somehow, and then that song.
Exactly. I just want to say, I can't write hits like John Mayer can, or even old Ed Sheeran. That's my best lyric.
That's crazy, man. I didn't realize that you kind of went into a flow, which is a very hard thing to achieve in life, which it seems to be what you get from these songs, because you're not talking about, oh, it had to sound this way, or guitars were the thing, so I had to put guitars on, or I needed to have 4 singles. It's not about any of that, which is kind of refreshing, because it's the true artist, or the authenticity that can be quite vacant now. And internet is great, internet is bad, internet gives a lot of opportunities, internet kind of spoils a lot of authenticity, because a lot of people across all forms of expression, and not that any self-expression is wrong here, you know, we're an hour and 30 minutes into a podcast that was completely unplanned, which is great, but there's no, like, you're not contriving anything. You went to Berlin, I presume, to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, to get out of my comfort zone, to change the scene up. I felt like there was an amazing energy there when I was there on tour. It just felt like people were a little more free in terms of the money thing and the, like, you know, I don't know. People were like drinking beers on the street barefoot. I was like, what's going on there? I've never seen anything like that. It kind of reminded me of New Orleans. You know, there was a freedom to it that was exciting to me, and I wanted to also get out of my comfort zone and get out of just see what that did, you know, give myself a runway, like a 30-day runway of like, you got nothing but this, but discovery of your music, and it was so fruitful. I mean, I want to do it again. I want to do it as a part of my life.
Are you just demoing? Are you just like voice notes, or do you bring a couple of mics and record on Logic, or what's your...
It was all voice notes.
So you're literally writing. You're not editing.
No, I wasn't. I really wanted to just go there with a guitar and a piano, and I found a place with a piano, and I borrowed a guitar from a friend there, and no recording, basically just voice memos and songs, really just trying to carve out the songs, which was a cool flow because I can get kind of distracted recording. I can go like, ooh, sound. But this wasn't about sound. It was just about songs.
Honestly, it is very transparent from listening to this record, and I hope somebody that is listening to this podcast goes, who's Theo Katzman? And you can listen to this maybe with a new understanding. Right. I don't know. I think it was Wolfpack that tweeted $1 million idea for Airbnb.
Yep.
Comes with a piano as an option. So now that makes sense to me.
Jack and I have talked about that, and I was talking about it with him like last week, and then I noticed he tweeted like idea for Airbnb to triple revenue. Yeah. It's true. It would be huge.
We haven't talked about it, and I'm not ending on a negative note here. You got very lucky, man. Your United States tour, I think you missed 3 shows.
Yeah, very lucky.
COVID, so I presume they'll reschedule. Is this the longest time in your life where you're not doing shows? Or how are you? Are you comfortable? Or
yeah, I'm fine, man. I'm very lucky that I got to complete the tour, and I'm also lucky to be at a stage where I'm performing like as a headliner across the States. So I don't, once this tour was over, that was going to be it for a while anyway for shows until the next tour. And we were looking at going to Europe, which we've had to postpone because I love playing in Europe, and I was very much looking forward to playing in Ireland. But we will get back to that whenever we can, So for me right now, I'm just trying to write. I'm trying to not be too hard on myself. A tour adjustment is always difficult for me. Coming back from the road is such a different energy, and getting home was kind of like it's always a crash landing. And then to come into that with the like quarantine thing was kind of wild. But I've been learning a lot in the house and getting to know my neighborhood in a new way. Getting to know my neighbors from across the way, like, what's up, man? That kind of thing. That's been a really beautiful.
That ties into your record, man. Like, that's maturing. When you're 21, you don't give a shit who lives around you because it's like me, career, me, go, go, go. And now it's like, oh, I wonder what Corey next door.
Yes.
You're happy to share a coffee with.
Yes.
And a conversation with your neighbor. No?
Absolutely. No, totally. I've been writing about it. It's really nice.
And that's one great positive about quarantine. I guess a downside in anyone who works creating things is you've been given this gift of pause. The world is on pause. So you better write that book. You better record that record. You better release that podcast. And when you're forced into a position, it's kind of hard to perform, which is strange because more often than not, you would secretly wish, oh, if I could just push pause just for a couple of days, I'd get my shit organized. Are you creating, writing? Are you finding there is a pressure? How does it sit with you?
Oh, yeah. Definitely a pressure. I mean, I put it on myself, and I'm trying to learn how to not do that, I get a lot of my joy from people and from watching the world, and certainly, it's not the same out there right now. But I do think a lot of good will come of this, as well as a lot of tragedy. It's like anything in life is dualistic. But I'm certainly grateful for the fact that you got the podcast going. I think it's amazing, and I'm discovering things. There are things I'm discovering. I know that a couple of the songs I've written, I'm like, oh, would have never written that. And that's cool. This is the life we're living, so I'm just trying to let it in and realize that I have time. I mean, I have fantasized about hitting the pause button, but it doesn't really pause. This isn't paused. Like you said, it's kind of like pressure's on. Do your best with the free time.
Yeah, I know, right?
So, I mean, I this is a bit of what I normally am like anyway. Like I'm trying to write, so I'm getting my days free and working on music. It's definitely nice to look at the calendar and see nothing on it for a change. But we'll see what we each do with that time. I mean, yeah, and if you don't do anything, fine. You're still a person, you know?
Have you taken up something new? And like you said, you were into cooking. Is there something you've taken to doing?
Yeah, I've been making a lot of fresh pasta, a ton. I got into making
From scratch?
Yeah, which I used to do when before I was a vegan.
So healthy.
Sorry, but anyway,
Bombshell.
Took a whole hour and a half before I mentioned it. But I was worried because I stopped eating it, and it was like the one thing I missed was fresh pasta because I was like, oh, I don't have any eggs. I can't do it without eggs. Turns out you can do it without eggs. Flour and water, baby. And so I've been making a lot of fresh pasta. And other than that, I'm just working on my music and working on a record I'm producing for another artist, and that's it. So, and reading books as much as I can, which was not very much at first because I was just playing guitar and yada yada. But I'm trying to be balanced. Work out, whatever.
Theo Katzman, honestly, I feel like we know each other better now and we brought our listener on this journey.
Me too, man.
Great to have you on the podcast.
Such a pleasure to be on, man. I don't mean to creep you out, but I love you.
Oh, it's mutual love, baby.
So there.
It's the unique selling point of this podcast. You come on, you fall in love with the host. I actually think we've broken the record. This is the longest podcast.
Cool, man. When I met you, I was like, that's my dude. I know that guy. That's going to be my friend.
Don't hold your breath, baby. Thanks so much for doing this podcast, man.
No, what are you kidding me? It's a pleasure, man. It's a joy to talk to you, and thanks for having me. I really love your show. All your guests have been amazing. I'm honored to be one of them. I hope everyone will look back on the other shows. It's so good.
In my back pocket. Oh, can we hear it in 3-part? Acapella, here we go. Oh yeah, I know that it's taking me all this time to say, girl, I'm slow. So it's taking me all this time to say, ooh, tiptoe. And I want to ignore this my mistake, girl, yeah. Oh, yeah. Uh-oh. Yeah, to hope that you know it's not too late, girl. Put it in my pocket, put it in my pocket, in my back pocket, put it in my pocket, in my pocket, in my back pocket. Whoa. That's good, yeah. Put it in my pocket, put it in my pocket, in my back pocket, put it in my pocket, in my pocket, in my back pocket. And I'll read it when I'm alone. Now listen to me, yeah. Here we go, you let me circle yes or no on this piece of paper, cause I really, really would love to know. Are you gonna be my 5th grade queen?
Are you gonna be?
Hand it back to me in a second and then I'll know if you're gonna be my special fly. Oh, girl, cause I need to know this time. Are you well? Put it in my pocket, put it in my pocket, in my back pocket, put it in my pocket, in my pocket, in my back pocket. Whoa, just MSG one more time. Then I'll read it when I